In this video, we're going to take a look at some of our basic modeling tools. So we're going to start out here with our model in place components, and we're just going to look at our basic elements for, I'm just going to set this to generic because we're just going to practice here. Our different forms that we can use here for modeling. So we're going to go through each of these items up here. So this is where you can really start to use these to build your own items within Revit, whether it might be a custom furniture piece, a lamp, um, all sorts of different items here, pretty much whatever you decide that you can build. So an extrusion is, these are all 3D elements. So all these with the solid blue are going to be positive forms. And this one here in the white and all these, you'll notice these are all the same names. They're just in white because they are a void form. All right, so that void means, as you can see in this little demo here, it's going to cut away from the positive form. So I'm going to start out with just the extrusion. The extrusion is going to have the same path that it does on the top of the item down to the bottom. So I am going to go ahead and draw. I'll just start out with a rectangle here. So I can draw a very simple rectangle. You'll notice over here you have a start and an end. The start is always going to be related to the work plane. For that one, the default is level 1. So that's what it's going to be here is level 1, and it's going to be 1 foot high. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that. We'll take a look at it in 3D. So I can also, once I've created it, I can still adjust it and move it with these arrows here. And I can always go back and hit edit extrusion and go back in to make edits as well, if I want to make sure that these are clean dimensions or if I have set info for that. So I'll go ahead and finish that one again. Again, this says 1 foot high. Let's say I want that to be 5 feet. And you can really build whatever you would like with these items. I'm going to copy this one up here. Oh, it is going to be attached to the work plane by default to level 1. If you want to detach that, just click here, and then I could copy that up. I'll just do a couple here. And I can adjust each of these individually. All right, so they're each their own unit as long as they aren't in the same, well, they're each, sorry, let me phrase that. These are each their own extrusion, but right now they are all in the same model. And what I mean by that is you'll notice I'm still in the model sketch mode here. So once I finish that and I hit finish model, then when I'm back here into my project and I'm out of that sketch mode, you'll see that all 3 of those are one item. So if I wanted to move them, they would move together as one item. So let me put some walls in here just so you can see the little bit of the distinction here on what we're doing. So there would be, the individual walls versus one component here. So you can build as many forms as you want in a model in place component. Just know that when you're in the model and building them together, they're going to be in the same model. Always go back in and edit in place. But all 3 of these, if I wanted them to be separate extrusions, I would need to, or if I needed them to be separate models, I would need to build each extrusion in its own model. And what I mean by that is, if I went back to level 1, I'll create a new one here. And I'll do a 1 extrusion in here. Keep it in mind, it does have to be one closed path. All right, so I finished my extrusion, but I'm still in the model. So if I were to copy these, when I finish that model, these are all still connected. So if I want these to be independent elements, what I need to do is finish the model, then I can copy the item. All right, so in that way, they're individuals. So that can get a little bit confusing as you start to work in this, but just remember there's 2 levels. All right, so first you have your model, then you have your forms. And so that for right now, for us is an extrusion, but it also applies to the sweeps, the blends, and these other items that we're going to learn. That's just kind of the biggest thing as you start to do this. Just remember that there's 2 levels of sketching for building these. You have the model level and then the form level. All right, and similarly, I could copy these up and move them around. You make sure to associate from the work plane, but you can start to stack these up, but this is going to be one model versus these are all individual models. You can also add materials to these. So let me go back in. I'm going to click on that, say edit in place, and I can just apply them directly, or I can set up a parameter. Parameter gives me more flexibility, but applying it directly is faster. Just means you have to go back into the element to change anything. I'll go ahead and finish that. So that means that now that I've done that, if I wanted to change those materials, I have to click on it, go back into edit in place, and select them. All right, so those are some basics on our extrusions. Let's take a look at our next one. I'm going to do a new model in place component. All right, this is going to be the blend. So the blend is similar to the extrusion, but it does allow you to have two different profiles. So we can watch the little demo here. So it does allow you to change the shape from the top to the bottom. And you can still adjust the height, but it's just going to be those two different profiles. So let's say I do a blend and it's going to put me into doing the base first, no matter what. So I'm going to draw the base. Then I'm going to click up here and say edit top. Let's draw the top there. And then if I wanted to edit the base again, I could, but I'm just going to go ahead and finish that. We'll take a look at it in 3D. So you can see the blend there. So that's what's called a blend, because it's blending that form based on the top and the bottom. So I can change the height here, or I can use the arrows, but it's going to continue to create a form that's blended between those two. So that could be something that's really handy for a, maybe a lamp base or a chair leg or something like that, or a couch leg. So, you can start to build custom pieces with that. All right, let's take a look at our next one here. That's going to be where the revolve. Now I'm still in the same model here, so I'm going to go ahead and finish that. That way the blend and the revolve are in different models. I'm going to go to model in place, generic, okay. All right, now the revolve is a two-step process here, similar to the blend. It's going to create a 3D shape by sweeping a 2D profile around an axis, just like it's saying there. So the first thing that I'm going to do is draw my boundary line. I'm going to go back to level 1 here. So the boundary line is basically going to be the profile that is swept around the axis line. So we'll just start with something simple here. So you can start to see how it's going to work. And then I'm going to draw so I have one complete profile. It needs to be one closed loop. I'm going to go to the axis line. So if I draw it right down the center there, I'm then going to end up with this form here. If I wanted it to be rotated the other way, I can rotate that in an elevation, or I can make sure that I draw it in an elevation instead of in a floor plan. But keep in mind as well that it doesn't have to be completely solid for the revolve. So if I were to adjust this, just using the arrow keys there, then I could create something that has a space in the center as well. It's just all relative to where that axis plane is to the form that you're drawing. So this one in particular really good for, if you're building a custom table for table legs or something like that, kind of functions similar to like if you know anything or are familiar with any woodworking, like kind of like what a lathe would do. So that's going to be your revolve tool. Make sure I finish the model here. So each one of these is its own model. Okay. And then I'm going to go back into the model in place. Let's go generic again. And I'm going to go back to my floor plan view. You can also model in 3D. I just tend to like to start it in a floor plan view or a flat view. And then two, the more that you practice and the more that you do, the easier it will be to model in 3D. So I'm going to go ahead and do a sweep. All right, so a sweep is going to create a 3D path along a 2D profile. So this would be something that might be used for like a crown molding or a gutter or something like that. So it's going to have a two-step sketch process as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit sweep. So the first thing I'm going to do is sketch a path. I can also pick a path. We'll sketch one first. This does need to be a continuous path. And the first one that you sketch is going to have the profile for the path. All right, that profile is going to be important here. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish my path. So you can see my path there. I can still see everything else is grayed out. I'm still in sketch mode. Now I'm gonna select a profile. So I can either sketch a profile or load one in. I'm gonna go ahead and sketch it. You can practice loading on your own. If you load a profile, you would just bring it in from the Revit library. And there's some pre-built ones for casework and for, they're not casework, for molding, and some gutters and some other different items that are in there to practice with. But you can also edit the profile. Revit's going to prompt me because I need to be parallel to that plane in order to sketch my profile, and that's not the view I'm in. So I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and sketch in my profile. So let's go with, and of course you can be more precise than that. Just as an example, it's going to be relative to that profile and to that origin point. So I'm going to go ahead and then finish that. So I've now finished my profile and I've finished my path. All right, but I still need to finish my sweep. So it's actually a 3-step process here. But let's go back to the 3D view. In 3D, you can see there, okay, that's the plane. That's the plane of the profile, these two here. And then we have the actual profile itself here that we sketched in, and then we have the path itself. So now I'm gonna go ahead and finish my sweep. And there you go. So it's going to take that profile that I created and it's going to extend it along the path that was sketched. All right, and then I'm going to finish my model and now I have my sweep. Okay, so remember you can combine these and put as many of these forms into a model that you would like, or you can build them individually depending on what you're creating. Okay, going back to my model in place component, let's take a look at the sweep blend. So the sweep blend is a combination of the blend and the sweep. So you can set a blend that sweeps along a defined path um, that varies from one to the other, kind of what you saw there. So let's go ahead and sketch a path. Then you just have two different profiles. So I'll go ahead and edit one of them here. I'll finish that one. That would do another profile. I can be in the same plane. Let's say it's that there. I'm gonna go ahead and finish my sweep and I'll finish my model. Let's take a look at it in 3D. All right, so you can see how it's creating a sweep along that path with two different profiles and blending those together. All of the voids are the same tools. They're just in the reverse where they're taking out a positive space. So let's go into this one. A big thing to note about the void forms is that you need to make sure that you're in a model with a positive form. So I'm going to go and edit in place. Okay, so in this one, I have 3 different forms, extrusions in this case, but forms with positive space. So I can use a void on one of these. So I'll go to my create tab and I'm gonna go to my void forms. And I'm just gonna go with a void extrusion, go to my level 1 for ease of modeling. And I'm just gonna cut a hole here in the center. All right, so I'm gonna finish that. And then you can see there's a hole there in the middle. It's pretty small, but that's okay because we know we can adjust these arrow keys. And I can have that pull up through all these items. You can see that it's only cutting the bottom one by default. And the reason for that is because that was the only item that it was touching when I drew it. However, I can have it cut multiple items. I just need to tell it to do so. So after the fact, if you have a void that wasn't touching an item when you first drew it, but you want it to cut that item, you can use your cut tool. That's going to be on the modify tab. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to select that void. And then I'm going to click on the items that I want it to cut. Oh, it's still not tall enough to cut all the way through. Let's try this. Oh, there we go. Um, Okay, so now I have it. Now it's cutting all three because I told it to cut all three. So just remember, if you create a void, it's not touching the item when you draw the void. You can always tell it what to cut after the fact. You just need to use that cut tool. Two-click process, first click on the void, second click on what you want it to cut, and you'll be able to have it cut multiple items.